Carl's on. Oh, no. If I see my name come up. Looking for my name.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Can you hear me? Hello, everybody. Sorry, my mic was not on. My name is Arya Johnson. I'm an assistant commissioner in the education department with communications. And I know some of you have to be out of your spaces within the hour. So I guess we should get started. There were a few indicators of what some staff members wanted to speak about today. Hello? I'm just going to start by asking the commissioner to, we were going to have health department officials, but they're busy with the COVID-19 response, as you can imagine. So they won't be here today, but they did ask us to jot down any health-related, safety and health-related questions that you had, and we'll get the answers to you after this meeting. On that note, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Richards. Please feel free to send any comments or questions via the chat function, or you can voice them here as well. I think there's enough, there's not too many people that we can't actually have a proper conversation. So Mrs. Richards, I'll hand it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a good day. It was quite a gloomy one, but I hope your experiences with our amazing preschoolers was awesome today. Thanks for taking some time to come on. And before I go any further, I just want to say thank you so much for the work that you're doing amidst the demands of the protocols. And, from time to time, I receive bits and snippets of information about what is taking place at the preschool. And I want you to know that the preschool serve as a beacon of light and hope for education. And again, I just thank and commend you for what you're doing. Today's session is really a check-in, and I know A.D. Bucci is online to assist with responding questions, but we wanted to link back and ask you, how are things going? How are you making out? What sort of issues are you encountering? Are there things that are going well? What type of support do you need? And so really, we're going to spend the bulk of the time listening to you and responding to your questions. So we really want to jump in at this time. So I'm going to turn it to Mr. Johnson, who will facilitate the session.
Thank you, Mrs. Richards. Just a couple of... Ms. Harvey, can you turn your mic off, please?
And it takes us so long to get it. Right.
Okay, I'll turn the mic off. How do you do that?
Yeah.
There's a couple of etiquette issues. If meetings are normally...
I think Ms. Harvey might be trying to assist someone else with getting on.
Sorry? If you have a camera, can you please turn it on, please? We'd like to see you. Secondly, if you're not speaking, can you turn your mics off? And ideally, we'd like people to come to meetings with their real names as opposed to their phone brand or whatever else you have there. Anyway, so the first order of business, I think we should address some of the things that were mentioned in the RSVP for the meetings. And there weren't many of them. People who did say they wanted specific topics addressed said they wanted the COVID updates, COVID protocols. There's a question here about itinerant staff in the event of a COVID outbreak, quarantine within one of those preschools we service, COVID and the demands being placed on teachers, a lack of subs, and maintaining class bubbles. Since most of you here are teachers, or all of you, I just wanted to call on Mrs. Manuel. Is that okay? If you can address the concern about the demands being placed on teachers.
Sure. I wish my staff were able to be on, but they have after school care, so that makes it tricky. But what we're finding is because the day is shortened due to the protocols, we're having to cram an awful lot into a short period of time. And the teachers are becoming overwhelmed with having to do the creative curriculum, also having to do Haggerty, MTSS. There's not enough hours in the day. And I am literally one person. And I have a half an hour in the office every day. I'm running all over the place, doing breaks, taking children to the bathroom. It is a very stressful job right now. The only good thing is I'm losing a few pounds with all the running around, but it's a highly demanding job. And then of course, with the learning bins, everything has to be customized to that child. It's not like you can send them off all to the block center or group to do an activity. You can't. Everything has to be individualized. Every Friday, the teachers have to sterilize everything and rotate the toys and put new challenges in. It is very demanding, and we're doing the best we can, but it is stressful, and it's really starting to hit a peak at my school. I can only speak for my school. The teachers are really starting to peak out now and just feeling like it's all too much.
Okay, I don't know if Ms. Bucci or the commissioner want to sort of address that.
Yes, I do want to address a couple of things, and of course I will invite AD Bucci to respond as well. I want to thank you for sharing, because it's important to be forthright and upfront with us so that we have a clear picture about what's happening. So we have the protocols, so you're managing those, but on top of this, you've talked about some things that have to deal with the teaching and learning piece and the support piece around the MTSS. So demands, because it's less time, but it's probably demanding anyway. It's probably going to be demanding anyway, even if it wasn't less time, along with the curriculum, Haggerty, MTSS, and then the impact of those on you as a leader, the impact on teachers, the bins, the sanitizing and all of that. When you think about all of those, and you have, you bring expertise to the table and experience, when you think about it, and you think about the fact that we have to do the protocols, when issues arise and health investigate, the first thing they're asking about, are you following your entry protocols? Are you sanitizing? So we know that can go away. What are some of the things that you think can be done to help alleviate some of that stress without compromising, what's happening with children? So what are your thoughts on that? And I invite anyone else to share, openly as well.
I think if we could have an allocated sub for 1 day a week, that would allow myself to be in the office for a whole day to catch up on all the paperwork hasn't gone away. The demands haven't gone away, just to catch up. And also an allocated sub, I can only speak for my school. I could split them so that they could spend half of the day with one teacher and half with another. And then they could get those bins turned over, cleaned out, restocked. Like a Friday would be ideal, because that's when we're trying to turn things over and make sure we're having new challenges for each child. We don't want them to get bored because they have to sit at that table, for most of the day. So we're trying to keep them engaged and challenged, and it's tough. So for me, having an allocated sub, even if it was just 1 day a week, that would make a huge difference to my staff and certainly to me.
Yes. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who wanted to piggyback on that answer or make any other recommendations for what we can consider?
I believe that some of the recommendations that Ms. Manuel just spoke of were sort of a collective sentiment of administrators in terms of the recommendations. So if everybody's not speaking at this moment, it may be that some of it is just echoing what we have recommended earlier.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I will say, I don't know if.
What about AD Bucci? Do you want to add anything or make any comments?
I will say that I have heard this before from some administrators, not all, and that I have encouraged them to share their schedules so that we have the data to support the request. And certainly I understand based on contact visit, all the information that preschool administrators are responsible for, it's quite a lot. And if, for instance, Ms. Manuel was saying she only gets a half an hour in the office, even if she spends an hour after school, it's still quite demanding to get everything in order for your school improvement plans. It is quite data driven and it requires some organizing and time to spend not only in your office, but you also need to be out observing the teachers because you have the clinical and the drop-by visits, you have the feed, or whether it's clinical administrative monitoring or if it's professional growth, you still need to supervise that. So I hear you.
Thank you so much for sharing openly.
Great. Now somebody else wants to know.
Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I will speak with AD Bucci around the recommendation, and then she will link back with you as leaders.
Okay. The issue of itinerant staff. What happens in the event of a COVID outbreak? Quarantine within one of the preschools we service. So before we go there, I just wanted to let people know that we've closed a survey. We did a survey with all the families, and I've just extracted the results for the preschool families, and all the people who responded agreed or strongly agreed that their children had adjusted well to the safety and health protocols. And they all also agreed or strongly agreed that their school is doing a good job with the safety and health protocols. So well done. Your parents are very happy.
Good.
There was a couple who neither agreed nor disagreed. So not sure, but nobody disagreed with that statement. And also the vast majority. Yeah, it's yes, I think that was quite surprising that the vast majority of them also felt the mitigation measures in the schools were just right. That 70% of the respondees and about 20% said it was too restrictive, and a very small amount said it was not restrictive enough. They also all agreed that their children's learning was progressing well. So that's the good news. And I just hope we can find a way to sustain that. And the commission and Ms. Bucci finds a way forward with the issue that's just been raised.
Yes.
The next issue that was raised in advance was the question of itinerant staff in the event of an outbreak or quarantine within the schools. And I think that's just related to what's a procedure, I suppose. Miss Dora.
Can we get some clarity on, so So the preschools currently have peripatetic or itinerant staff coming to the schools. The question is, if there's an outbreak, what happens with those staff?
I think so. Is Miss Dawes here?
I did see Miss Dawes online.
She was actually at my school today. So we did chat about this topic, and we were just discussing how the fact that she works with every class and every school in the 5 schools that she works. And let's say by Friday this week, if there was an outbreak or a positive for one of our preschools that a class has to be shut down, what does that mean? And that affects the ET and it affects the learning support teacher. As you know, they each have 5 schools and they're in every class in those schools. So we were just wondering, you know, what happens because that could be, you know, detrimental, the fact that they're in. And one of the things we talked about was with community spread right now, which we hadn't had prior, would it be wise to maybe look at her 5 schools and see where the need is the highest right now? And it's actually not like CM, my school, but other school that maybe needs her every day that they couldn't go without her. Because I just think we need to be smart at this point. That was our conversation. If she's back, maybe she can add more.
Yeah, she's not present at the moment.
So just for clarity, are you recommending that we go back to the support staff in schools as we did for our recovery weeks? But it really wasn't recovery because it was the beginning of the year.
That is something that Ms. Doris we talked about, like, what are some of the options? What are some of the possible solutions? And, you know, I think that I think it was, she was at Devonshire, but I think it's more important to look at the student need currently for ET and the 5 schools that she's at. And maybe it means that she looks, because we have three weeks left before Christmas, that maybe the highest need gets her this week and then so forth and so forth. And she's just in one building for the week versus all the classrooms for the whole lot. So if by Friday, one of the classrooms tests positive or someone in that, you know, it affects a lot of children who she's spent close time with over the course of the week. It was just a recommendation and a thought.
Thank you.
We certainly invite any others who are online to share their views around that recommendation or thought.
I will speak up again, sorry. I would struggle actually with that because I understand what you're saying completely, Sarah, because of that, because of the spread of the COVID. However, it's such a relief having those people in my building. It gives me 2 seconds to breathe, and it's an extra pair of hands that. So I would be, I would struggle if I didn't have. I think we would have to definitely make sure that if the ET is not able to come that week, that the counselor is able to come or somebody's able to be in the building to give some kind of relief.
Yeah, I believe Miss Dawes has just entered the room. Miss Dawes, are you there?
Yes, finally I got kicked out, sorry.
We were just discussing your comments about itinerant staff.
Yes, I think the concern that we had, because I know there's a few of us in preschool, is basically the protocols, because once again, if we're traveling from school to school and we actually see every student, just wanted to make sure that we're clear and notified of anything that comes up, so that because it puts the other schools at risk, because we literally go to a school a day. So just wanted to make sure that we're being covered and that we're not putting not only ourselves and our families at risk, but every other school that we travel to. So that is a concern that we wanted to make sure that.
There is a set of protocols around.
Yes, are you saying it in light of where the community currently is, given the, you know, we're seeing the increase, so there's a need to reevaluate and link back with health and say, is this model still appropriate?
Yes, yes.
We can definitely do that, and then we'll link back, yes.
Because right now, with some situations, it's getting to the point where we've been doing like one school a day, but in some situations, we may have to go to another school in the afternoon. So yeah, that's definitely, we definitely want to make sure that has been put in place and that it's still safe to do so.
Thank you, and thanks for the clarification as well. And we will definitely link back with the leaders, and then they'll be able to share that with all of, share it with staff.
Okay, the other comments were to do with COVID updates, and are we in a position, Mr. Richards, to give any updates on the health side, the COVID-19 side, or should we get the health people?
Ideally, our health representatives would be given updates. I don't know if there was something specific, whoever submitted that, if there was something specific you were looking for an update on. And we can certainly, if I do have that information, I'm more than happy to share.
That was Eugenia Payne. Are you here? And then somebody, Morby, wanted to know about, sorry, I'm just getting to everybody. Laurie Morby had noted COVID protocols. Can you expand on what you would like?
Basically the same thing that Miss Doris had talked about with us as being itinerants, and what that was going to look like. So you've already answered it, or we're getting towards an answer. Sorry.
Yes. And we will look to get a response back tomorrow, because we can understand that will be a very pressing matter for you in your, in your roles as you move from school to school.
Maintaining class bubbles is another issue. Andrea Tucker has noted that. Ms. Tucker, are you here?
Yeah, can you expand on that? Does anyone else have if Ms. Tucker isn't here at this time, I see her name is here, but I don't know if she had to step away or not. Whether anyone else has a question around class bubbles. Is it that the class bubble, maintaining the classroom bubble, the challenges with maintaining the classroom bubble, expanding the bubble? Are the bubbles being maintained? What about class bubbles?
Can I just interject, Mrs. Bucci?
Sure.
Basically at Southampton Preschool, we don't really have that problem because we have such a large plant. And so what we do during the day, they stay in their bubbles for the entire day. But we had 3 playground fields that they play on. So one class will play on one playground, the other class will play on the other 2 playgrounds. So we don't really have an issue as far as physical space, because we have 2 actual rooms that we don't use. So we don't have a problem when it comes to physical space. We don't have a problem with keeping children in bubbles because we have the physical space here at Southampton Preschool. So I don't have a problem with that per se. My only concern is that when parents are traveling and they come back to Bermuda, are they being asked, when they come back to Bermuda, are they being asked, do they have children in the public school system or the school system as a whole? And if they do, are their children going to have to be quarantined like them? Because I don't think parents are being honest and forthright with us.
Right.
As far as when they get back on the island, are they being quarantined? And if their children are being quarantined as well.
So is the concern that there are parents that are quarantining, but they're sending their children to school?
Yes, this is what I'm wondering.
Okay. This has come up before. There are some parents who've given us that feedback, as well as the suggestion that health, when health reminds them that they need to keep their children home as well. So I don't know, Mr. Richards.
And then another question, we're keeping these children in bubbles at school, right? But we have no control over what happens nights and weekends. And I know for a fact children are going to football classes, they're going to dance classes. So bubbles are being, they're being mixed. They're having sleepovers, and it's very concerning because parents are not doing their due diligence at home. And that's my main concern.
So just a couple of things, and I appreciate you raising these matters, Leader Joines. the matter around parents who have traveled and they're quarantining and they're sending their children to school, whenever a leader or staff member becomes aware of that, the parent does have to be contacted and they need to be told to collect their child from school, let AD Bucci know, and also the Department of Health needs to be informed. But the child, the policy is the child quarantines with the parent. And they do that for at least 8 days. The parent has to have a COVID, you know, a test indicating that they're COVID free before the child can return to school. So if you are aware, you have the authority to say to a parent, come and collect your child and your child will quarantine with you. If the parent gives you any issues, you have the support of AD Bucci, Department of Health, and myself. So that's the first thing. Now, the matter of bubbles and the question that you talked about, children are not necessarily in bubbles outside of school. And we can get health to respond to that because they've answered that previously. But one of the things that we have to keep in mind, I've been told, is that the schools are accountable for children during the time that they are in school, that we really have to be diligent about the bubbles and the protocols. So if there's an issue raised, say with a preschooler, the first thing that the Department of Health is going to do is to come in and interrogate, and I use this word in a positive sense. They're going to start with the leader, and they're going to start by saying, did you keep the children in bubbles? How, you know, did you manage to maintain the integrity of that? Because that again starts with the contact tracing. Did you follow the protocols? Did teachers, you know, have teachers been diligent with wearing masks? Have you ensured that there's ventilation, you know, and they're going to drill down and they're going to be asking a lot of questions around that because they need to know that a school has maintained the protocols. So it's going to be important for schools to operate, you know, continue to operate with integrity around that. And again, schools have a different responsibility. And I know what you were saying, Leader Joyce, that, you know, they're going out into these play groups, et cetera, and so on. But schools have to ensure that when they come in, hands washed, you know, the sanitizing takes place and all of that. Keep a distance where possible. But I will get health to sort of step out a response to that because it has come up before. I anticipate it will come up again. And so I think we just need that under what we will call like a frequently asked question, and we'll get the response to that. So I appreciate you raising that.
Thank you.
Ms. Richards, I just have a quick question. How far back does the protocols go? For example, if you have a parent who needs to quarantine because they've been in contact with someone who was tested positive, what is the repercussions of them still sending their child to school when they have to quarantine?
So when you say how far back, so let's say something happened this week and we knew that the parent traveled, right? Or
not even just traveled, if their colleague traveled. Yeah, the parent had to be quarantined.
Say the parent had to quarantine, right? So what we're learning is from the Department of Health is that if the parent has to quarantine, they would notify them that if they have a school-age child, etc., they would have to quarantine.
Okay.
So that's the first, you know, so if you can think about it this way, the child or the children follow what's happening with the parent.
Okay.
If the parent has to quarantine, the child has to quarantine. Okay. That's what helps me to remember it.
Okay. I also have a question with regard to minibuses, because I know that a lot of kids take transportation. And so for instance, I know that, or I'm quite sure that like in the East, that there are kids that could have potentially been riding on the bus with the kids that were in that P2 class. I don't know, I'm just using that as an example. I don't know that for sure. But, you know, there's a lot of places that share transportation. And so if these kids are on the buses together in the mornings, you know, what does that look like? And I know that it's inconvenient for parents, but it's just a question as to, is that being considered?
So just a couple of things, and I'm glad you raised the minibuses. So when the Department of Health is doing their contact tracing, they would have had to factor that in as well. But the other piece is just, I would say maybe, so Friday, so 3 days ago, I was receiving some feedback about minibuses that we need to reinforce, you know, to ensure that the children are, you know, wearing their masks, that they are, you know, maintaining the distance as much as possible. But it's my understanding that health did factor in the minibuses. They would have been informed about that piece, you know, the context for children, not just minibuses, but after school programs, etc.
Okay. Somebody wants us to talk about Plan 2022. That would have been Miss Joyens. So am I pronouncing your name right, Mrs. Karen Joyens? Is she here?
Yes, she's here.
Ah, there you are. You've got to unmute.
So basically, I was just, you know, I'm very pleased with what's going on as far as the Plan 2022 plans are going with the consulting team. I was just wanting to, I know there were people that came on board as far as those different teams. I just want to know how is that going at this present time.
Do you mean the school redesign and learning?
Yes, part? Yes, okay. Yes.
So you would be aware that an email and an advert went out for persons to express interest.
Yes.
And there was a committee that would have looked at all of the persons who submitted, you know, completed the forms. Coming out of that, they selected a cross section of 54 individuals who have become a part of the redesign team. And when the IU team was on site, on island, the end of October, they had a number of activities. Well, they had what they call onboarding, bringing that team, that redesign team on board, going over expectations, sharing different strategies. And then what they're looking to do now is to divide that team of 54 into smaller teams that are going to start focusing on pedagogy and curriculum and things like that. So that's where they are at this point.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome.
Okay, we've exhausted the topics that were sent in advance. Is there anybody else that has anything that hasn't been discussed so far that they would like to have discussed? Any other issues raised?
Any teachers that are here on the site today? You have any concerns?
While you're thinking about that, we are setting up a Facebook group for all staff. Is it just teachers or is it all school staff, Mr. Richard? You would like
all school staff.
All school staff. And if you have access to Facebook, you can join that. It's a very quick way to get information to you and also to get, you know, continue these types of conversations. We will be we normally would have streamed this into that group. So I'll be uploading the video because I actually forgot to stream it into the group. There's nobody in the group right now anyway. So I would encourage all of you to join the Facebook group. It's called BPS School Staff on Facebook. So I will send you all an email with the exact Facebook address for that. There's a question here about the travel policy. Is it 14 days after a person travels or after the 8th day negative result that they can return to school for students?
Is it 14 days after so once an individual arrives on island, that's when the quarantining would start. So is it 14 days? Let me just go to the chat for the question, sorry.
Commissioner, I believe it's 14 days that.
Or is it after the 8th day negative? So for schools, because we're medium risk, we look at 14 days. And the first day would start when the individual arrives on island. In fact, based on what's been shared with me, and again, this has been, health is leading out. And so, we have to either ask for information or we get it when they share it. So they actually indicate to travelers the day that, they can, that the quarantine would finish. Now, the position we're taking, though, is that if someone has quarantined as a result of travel, we would want evidence that they are COVID-free before they return to school, because we want to ensure that, that individual is coming and that's not going to have an adverse impact on staff or children.
I do think, I recall, I was just looking at the protocols today. I think day 0 is when they arrive. So
yes, 0 is arrival. Day 1 is the next day.
My apologies.
Yes.
So just to be clear, because I think there's a little confusion for myself. You're talking about when the child travels, but if the child stays in Bermuda and their parents travel and they live in the same house as their parent who's quarantining, health had told me that once the parent receives their 8-day negative test, not anything about day 14, that the child can return to school on that next day, which could be day 9. So this is different from and I have emails to state this because I've had numerous parents who have traveled, and I've always queried just in case some policy has changed. So our other preschool administrators, so it's 14 days and not the 8-day positive test that I've been told by Marie Beach?
I was told 8 days and they had to provide a negative test. Once the parent had an 8-day negative test, the child could come back to school. That's what I was told.
Yeah, same.
We will work to clear it up, because I'm telling you that I know of specific situations where the child has been out for 14 days.
In our recent,
were you positive 8th day test for the parent? So we really need to get it cleared up, because it's every time we meet a group of staff this week. This is another one of those questions very similar to the question that Leader Joins raised about, we keep them in bubbles in school, but they're not in bubbles outside. This one over the 8-day/14 day keeps coming up as well.
Yeah, one of the issues is that the health department in the initial draft said, ideally, use the word ideally, it should be 14 days. And then it changed halfway through and said 8 days negative test. And then I have been trying to get it cleared up since, but thanks for raising it again, because we will have to get a definitive answer.
It changed. Yeah, we did have the ideally. We've had meetings with Nurse Robinson, and certainly we were back to the 14 days because schools are moderate risk. So I believe we need to update schools on travel for students. I'm meeting actually tomorrow with Ms. Beach. And before we meet, I'll make sure that we get this clarified once again. But our last meeting last week, we came to the 14 days because the ideally was a gray area, and that's not a space that we can operate in. It's in grayness. And one of the concerns that came up is that teachers or parents who go into schools, they are out for the 14 days, but they have what's called mobile quarantine, which means that at the 8th day, people can go about and be quarantined, but still moving until they get the 14-day test. And so that's caused some confusion, and schools it's clear is medium risk. And so that the precautions are extra than as if you were just in the community moving about maybe off your property, because up to 8 days, if you're in quarantine, you should be, unless you had your pre-test and all of that, you are to quarantine at home. So we'll have to be really, really clear on that and have it in writing.
And send out the same message to everyone in the system.
Yes.
Can I say one thing as well? I understand that we have no control over what happens nights and weekends, but for me, what I've instilled or what I've done is just, I'm going to get COVID tested every month to be on the safe side. So that's because, like I say, we have no control of what happens nights, weekends, afternoons, or whatever, but to protect ourselves, I would recommend, well, for me, I go get COVID testing every 4 weeks.
And again, it's very important, you know, the standard practices of making the mask.
Yes.
Making sure the nose is covered, because sometimes, you know, as we move about, sometimes we still see individuals with masks under their nose, and it should be covering here and coming down. So it's the mask, it's the hand washing, and then maintaining the physical distancing. A Department of Health officer was at a school and said that, and it was either preschool or P1. I know it was, you know, the lower level, and that the teacher was hugging children. Well, that's not permitted under these pandemic conditions. And so, you know, we have to still, as much as we love children and we want to cuddle them and we want to wish them well, at the end of the day, that type of contact should not be made, because adults and health will have to explain this. The transmission of COVID to children is higher with adults transmitting it to children than children transmitting it to adults. There's a lot of science, the science is indicating there's limited transmission from children to adults. Adults are more of the risk to children than children are to adults. So adults really have to make sure that they're, you know, keeping that distance, wearing your mask, washing hands on an ongoing basis. And those, you know, those strategies will help mitigate, you know, the transmission of COVID.
Okay, anybody else? It's 4:20 and...
Yes, I have a few questions that have nothing to do with COVID. My first question is about the upcoming open houses for preschool. My question is, will they be done virtually? My second question is in regards to the kids who we currently have in preschool. For the last few years, we've had the talk about foundation year. So they transfer from our 4-year-old year preschool to P1. Will it be foundation year? Because parents have been calling and inquiring about when are open houses, what's the registration process? Will the new restructuring affect where I can apply based on the parish that I live? I'm getting lots of questions, which are good questions. Even for myself as a parent of a current preschooler, deciding where I'm going to be able to send my son for next year and what it looks like. Is it P1? Is it foundation? So I know it's November, it's December next week. We'll be in Christmas and we blink and we come back and it's open houses. And so it's really imperative that conversations be had regarding all of this very quickly.
I can make a quick comment around open houses and say that they will be virtual, but as it relates to the foundation year, there are still we know there's a commitment to having a foundation year. The question is when that will actually be implemented, but we have started some professional development around that, and AD Bushi can just update everyone in terms of what's happening there, because we want to, even though we may not be, you know, didn't move in that direction for September of this year, the training and professional development around, you know, the pedagogy, the dispositions and attitudes, etc., that has started.
Yes, we have started. We have training twice a month at the P1 level. Teachers at the P1 level engage in training that would be for foundation, reception, kindergarten, because we're in the space of school redesign. we will be taking input from the community, getting further comments from from parents and teachers and all. But no matter what you call it, we are working towards closing the gap between preschool and P1. And so the teachers are engaged in learning, active learning, active play with a purpose, so that children are engaged in not only inquiry learning at the P1 level, but also where the teaching is at a high quality and developmentally appropriate. So we're looking at the whole child and learning where they're doing, and not where the teacher is just talking and they're listening and they have to be quiet. So that training has been going on. I think we've had about 4 trainings, 3 or 4 trainings, and we close the class. Teacher gets to leave the class at the end of the day an hour early, so that they're able to engage in that training. And the feedback has been very positive. The P1 teachers are very excited. And we have, you may have heard of Mr. Adam Unwin-Berry, who's working with the Math Initiative. His team is working with us on the P1 high quality, we call it early years training. And we're covering all areas. So we're looking at the whole child. And so each session, we highlight what is best practice for young children. So it would be very appropriate for a foundation year, appropriate for kindergarten. And so we know in the school redesign, the reference to the first year of a primary, it says kindergarten, but it may even still be called P1 foundation or P1 this, where we don't have a name, but we do know what is best practice and what we want to see happening, so that all children get to progress from preschool on into P1, so that they're still growing. We don't want to say, well, preschool ends here, stop, and then you start in P1 and it's a whole new starting point and everyone has to be at that same place. Learning and growing should continue. And we know that not only for P1 children should they be engaged in active learning, but that's throughout the course of learning.
Okay, well, it's 4:25. There's 2 more questions. Miss Laurie Morby has had a hand up. So can you go ahead, please, Miss Morby?
Sorry, that was from before about the minibuses. So.
Oh, okay.
Down.
May I just make a comment? I'm sorry about the noise, but can I make a comment?
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm wondering if we should give some.
Ms. Ming is in after-school program.
Yeah, sorry, yes. I'm wondering if we could give some thought to supporting P1 teachers, P2 teachers with the creative curriculum. You know that it can be used as a resource for Cambridge. I've often dreamt of that.
And you have been a P1 teacher, correct?
P1, P2.
P1, P2. So speaking from...
You know that teaching strategies and creative curriculum is an awesome resource. And they have it right now up to P3 level, I think it is. I'm wondering if some thought could be given to using the creative curriculum as a resource, even as we are using Cambridge. I'm going to turn off my mic.
Yes. Even the training that we're engaged in right now, it aligns with the creative curriculum because it is best practice and it is active play and engaging students in exploration. And we know that we have focused a lot on inquiry, but we also focused on intentional teaching. With school redesign, we are in a space where we can try some things. That's one of the things that we're constantly told, that we can try things now. So thank you. That's something for us to think about. I welcome other administrators as well as teachers' thoughts on that. It's a great question and certainly worth thinking about further.
Tyra Simmons wants to know, why can't students stay at the preschool level for 2 years before transitioning to primary school?
So the goal is to work with children where they are and have them to grow and learn on a continuum. And so the environment between preschool and P1 should be a natural progression where children don't need to stay at a preschool level to still be have the benefit of the richness of a preschool experience. So that's what we're working towards, is having a smooth curriculum continuum, pedagogy continuum, as well as assessment continuum. We do know that the mandatory school age is at age 5, and that is legislated in the year which they turn 5. And so the only time that children have a second year in preschool is when the parents make the request for delayed entry. Now, we have looked at some models where you have mixed age and you may have some 4 and 5-year-olds in classes, or you may have some 5 and 6-year-olds in combined classes. So there are, again, lots of ways of looking at or addressing developmentally appropriate and using different models. But the aim is best practice and to stay focused on the child so that we don't have gaps in learning, because if we do, we have shaky foundations. So we want to ensure that our foundations for children are strong, because the results show up when they're in P3, when they're taking those Cambridge tests or any other types of more formal testing. And so if we want different results, we certainly will have to do things differently.
Thank you very much. If there's nobody else, it's already 4:30 and some of you have to go. Are there any burning questions? We will follow up on the things that need to be followed up on and email everybody that's here, although I don't know if we've got everybody. Oh, will creative curriculum be phased out? That's the final question. Can we answer that very briefly in about a minute or less? Mrs. Richards?
Would it be phased out?
Yeah.
We have invested quite a bit in training and in curriculum, and all indications to me, if we're investing funds in it, that we would be using it. The conversation around phasing out the creative curriculum has not been held at my level. I don't know if the commissioner would like to say anything.
Yeah, what I do want to say is that part of the school redesign process will involve an analysis and examination of all curricula currently in the system. So maybe that's where the question is coming from. And so you will have an opportunity as preschool leaders and teachers to have some input when we talk about that. So your voices are going to play a critical role. You're the experts at your level. And so when the time comes for the analysis, then you will be playing a key role there. And so really your voices and your input are going to be quite, they're going to be determining factors when we consider the creative curriculum and teaching strategies. So I'll leave it there because we don't want to keep you beyond the 4:35. This is a sacrifice of time anyway, given, your rigorous day. So we do appreciate that. And we appreciate you coming online, and we will definitely be following up so that we can address the recommendations and questions that have come.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of the day. Don't forget, you can always send feedback through the feedback form. And anyway, I'll be following up with an email to give you those reminders as well as the items that we have to do. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you, teachers. Thank you, administrators.
Stay safe and well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting now.